Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Think Sacred podcast. I'm Zach. I am here with Phil, my father. If you guys are new to the podcast, what we do is we usually have an open discussion, and we talk about various topics. And usually someone comes in with a more theological viewpoint and another person comes with a more philosophical viewpoint, and we just kind of discuss what we talk about. And so today we're going to talk about let's talk about like being resilient in like day-to-day life, like I mean there's a lot of stuff going on right now. Like I've been like super busy, and I've been in a lot of pain because of my back and everything like that. And so what does the Bible say about, like being resilient in life? First of all, before we get into that, though, yeah, do you have any notes on? Did you watch the last episode with me and Mom, and then the one before with you and me?
I did. I don't have any specific notes right now. I should be more diligent, but I've been pretty swamped too. So
Yeah, it's been a
it's been a whirlwind for the last number of days.
well. This has probably been probably the busiest. Yeah, probably busiest 2 or 3 weeks I've had in probably years. It's been a lot. So
yeah. And right now I'm so busy that basically I'm eating and having my coffee while we're doing this podcast. So and as Zach didn't mention on this one, but we don't come prepared, so to speak, on purpose. And so when you ask me, like, what does the Bible say about being resilient? I couldn't prepare for that because I had no clue what this podcast was going to be about.
Yeah, well, I really didn't know what this was going to be about either. I was kind of like mulling over it, you know what I mean? I guess it just seems relevant, to talk about. It's like life gets like really hard sometimes for people, you know what I mean? And it's easy for people to kind of like when they're in that state to just kind of like throw away things like religion, throw away things like, you know what I mean? Because they're like so concentrated on like survival, you know what I mean? And it's funny, it goes back to all the other discussions, where I always bring up this survival aspect to life, you know what I mean? And so yeah, it's kind of interesting. Maybe maybe nature's evil. Maybe society is good. No, I don't know. No, I'm just joking.
I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to kind of assess the question. Maybe I'll remember things or things will come to mind as we go through this podcast today. But what does the Bible say? So I can answer the question, what does the Bible say about resilience? I really don't. I can't even think of it right now.
Yeah. Do you think like our ancient whatever ancestors, do you think that like their life was so difficult and hard that like maybe they didn't even think about like that, you know what I mean? It's like it's just all the time. Could you imagine if it was just all the time? You're always hunting, gathering, trying to survive the winter.
Well, if the Bible does say anything, there's a couple things that do come to mind, to tell you the truth. And one of them is it just talks about well, basically there's an example of in the past all the prophets and the people that came before, right? And we call them the people of the Hall of Faith, right? So in Hebrews, whoever wrote Hebrews, we can conject, we have conjecture on that. But the point being is that whoever wrote Hebrews was talking about being resilient and talking about the people that went before, and some had success and some were actually, killed for their faith, right? And it just points to these examples and explains that these people they did things as God instructed them to do, whether it was preaching back to Israel for the things that they weren't doing correctly or weren't following God, or propping up idols and different things like that. So it basically just in terms of being resilient, in terms of being resilient as a Christian, it almost tells us, I guess, biblically to not be caught up in the world and the worldly things, and the worldly thoughts is really a lot of what the thing is about, right? Don't be caught up in the religion of this world. Don't be caught up. I hate to say it. I would say don't be caught up in this thing that we seem to be caught up in America, where it's kind of Christian nationalism, or I forgot there's some terms for it. I can't remember the term,
Oh, I don't know. Oh, this is interesting.
Yeah. And so, don't be caught up in those things that are going to hinder us. Throw off everything, throw off every weight that stops us, run the race set before us as people have done before, as Christ has done before, and run the race as we're supposed to run the race. Now, one thing that people take that and they say, basically, we're going to work hard to the bone. I don't think it's saying that. I think it's saying stay resilient, even if we're not busy, even if we're not swamped with the basic things of life. The resilience is the fact that you're going to come up against opposition. And whether it be actual people or spiritual opposition you're going to come up against, and God has given us the strength to withstand that. So I think that's part of resilience is whether we're busy or not, we're going to have opposition. If we're talking the truth and speaking the truth, right?
Well, I want to ask you more about this like Christian nationalism that you're talking about, but I had a really good thought in the midst of that when you were going through it, and I don't know exactly what you said to trigger this, but I thought about sometimes God tells us to do things, and you were saying that like the prophets, some of them were successful, some of them weren't, and it's like
successful in the eyes of the world, like what I mean?
Yeah, in the eyes of of course. Yeah. Sometimes I guess it's possible. This would definitely be a possibility. Is that God would send you forth on a task, knowing that like it's an impossible task or a task that you're going to fail, and maybe that in your failure you are meant to learn something. You know what I mean? Like, you ever had that? I'm sure there's been like moments in schooling where a teacher did that for fun, to show people that like, hey, not everything is gonna work out the way you think it's gonna work out, or whatever. Not everything's always gonna be successful. Maybe we should be more accepting of that we fail, and that failure might be perfectly natural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that. That is, when we're talking about resilience and how do you work through things and how do you process things, the examples, there are really good examples in the Old Testament about God telling people to do things. Think about it. God told Noah to build an ark, and the opposition for 120 years must have been immense, right?
Yeah.
They must have thought he was absolutely crazy. Now, one thing I surmise a little bit, and this may be going a little bit off the deep end because I've never heard it, and so I may be wrong, but when it says he built it talks about him building the ark. I don't think it was just him. Obviously, I do think it was his three sons that helped him as well.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Probably his daughters-in-law, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's probably like a family thing.
Yeah, so I don't really think that he did it himself. I do wonder, here's what I surmise on this, right? I do wonder if it's like anything. It's like, hey, I worked on, whatever today. Well, you may have worked on it, but you might have actually hired someone out to actually help you with maybe some of the finer details of it, right? Today, like I'm working on a job for someone who's actually remodeling this rental house that was just torn to bits and shreds, right?
Okay.
He's going to go and say, hey, here's the thing I worked on, and he's going to get paid for it, right? Well, I was in there doing some of the work as well. Like hanging lights and doing some of the touch-up painting and different things like that, right? Point being is that I don't know if I'm not saying this is biblical or not. I'm wondering if part of what if the ark was built also by people that Noah hired
Yeah.
to help him, and those people perished in the flood because they
Very
didn't believe.
possible.
You know what I mean? They just
Yeah.
they're like you know.
like you
So
said,
I'm just
not,
wondering. You know,
not biblical, but definitely a possibility. Yeah.
Now the other thing that you mentioned, and it's really good, and it's something that that I am really trying to get a hold of, and it really is. I mean, if you read, it's back to the basics. But Hebrews again is a really good example, 11, and it talks about the Hall of Faith and the people that the people that did what God wanted. And some of them actually, you know, lost their lives because they did, and some of them actually had success on the earth because of what God asked them to do. So one, and the Christian nationalism, I think, is the term, but maybe we can go back to that. I'm not sure. But one thing here in the United States, and it may be a little more throughout the world when it comes to Christians, but there is a false understanding that if we follow God, things are going to be easier and we're going to have success. We need to throw that in the trash. So if we're talking about resilience and we understand, we have a better perspective of we are just asked to be faithful, right? That's what we're asked to do. We're asked to be faithful in a faithless society. And there are times in the Bible where preaching was done, whether it be Jesus or John the Baptist or in the Old Testament, again, the prophets of old, when they preached, if you think about it, like, you know, Jonah went to Nineveh, they were saved. You know, we can talk about Amos, though. If you read through Amos, they were, you know, they didn't do what Amos told them to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And some of these prophets, because they were preaching the truth, they were hated so much that some of them were killed. And Jesus even mentioned that. So we gotta understand that that because we do things, our life isn't going to be a success. I heard this on a Christian radio station like about a week or two ago. And it drives me nuts because they were using the example of money, like money when we give money,
when money and
give. Yeah, it just drives me nuts. And this isn't a bad Christian station, so to speak, right? But they still have this. You know, like if you ask them, point blank, they probably said, no, I don't believe that. But they were actually purporting on the radio station that if they were implying, I should say, that if you give money to certain ministries, right, God will bless you back monetarily. And I'm thinking, wait a sec, that's almost like that's the name it, claim it, and you know, the prosperity gospel. That's a surface level, a small inkling of that. And that is not the way to do it. You know, if you want to give, you give as your heart desires, you know, like it says, God give willingly, right? For God loves a cheerful giver. That's a New Testament way of doing it.
Yeah.
And I don't expect that if you give your bills that you should have paid with that money that you couldn't pay, you can't pay now, don't expect God to give you that money back. You know what I mean? For those bills, saying, well, because I gave this, God is going to give me money for the car payment and the house payment that I didn't have money for, but because I gave it to this ministry. That's not God. That's not what God, that God has not promised you that. Okay. So why am I talking about that? I'm just talking about being resilient. Is whether you're busy, we could talk about like how do you plan for all these things? You got to have time for God, and you have to, you know, but how do you be resilient when you're busy, when you're not busy? Making sure that the perspective we have of what God has promised us is in the future after we pass away, and nothing is guaranteed here on earth from God.
Yeah. What I was thinking though is you were talking about about becoming a Christian, and some people saying like it making your life easier or something like that. Well, my thing that I would say about that is, in a way, does make your life easier in the fact that it gives you motivation, it gives you strength, like to push through things, right? The faith and of that, everything's gonna work out and all that kind of stuff. Like, so in a way, you could say that makes going through hard times easier. You could say because you have you know what I'm saying? You have a different perspective. You have a perspective that's more, just in line.
You have more, I think there's a couple things. Absolutely, because we talked about it before, faith and hope, you know what I mean? And the hope that we have is something that helps us through and helps us become more resilient. It should, right? Absolutely. And it gives us, it gives us peace. Sometimes we struggle with that, but it can give us a peace knowing that there is a future for us,
Yeah.
Where we talked about it before, where on this earth, it's just like a vapor, you know what I mean? It is the time, we think, it's like a vapor when it comes to, the perspective of eternity, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not even, the interesting thing about that is it's not even in the same category, right? Infinite and finite are just two completely different things. You know what I mean? They're not even the same thing. So it's like, it makes it kind of weird.
Yeah, and we can. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe if Mom and I are talking about, like she was so busy today that now I have to actually do something after this podcast, and basically we're just squeezing it in at this time. But she was double and triple booked herself. And sometimes we do that. But what does that have to do with resilience? I'm just saying that she and I may have a conversation about, I have my schedule, she has her schedule. Mm-hmm. We have things that we do with the grandkids and the time that we pick them up and all that stuff, right? And other things as well. And so, like, I haven't even gone, or she hasn't even. Neither of us have gone shopping. If you've seen the fridge, it's pretty empty. You know what I mean?
We don't have ours too. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't had time to really go do that. And I hate shopping when I don't really have a good list. When I just grab stuff and it's like, what am I doing? I need to just fill the cupboards, but I'm filling it with stuff that makes no sense, right? The point is that we may actually come together and we may talk about our schedules and different things like that. But it's one thing to do that and say, how are we going to plan for the 24 hours given in each day, better? It's something that we always have to adjust for. That's one thing about being resilient. But I think the resilience you're talking about is more of no matter what's hitting us, no matter if we're busy, no matter if we're not busy, how do we just go about our day when we're in the midst of it at the time? I guess is how I was trying to address it.
Well, it's interesting that, one thing I just thought of there is, as you're talking about Mom and you being able to cover for something that she was needing done, so another thing that adds, and this is a Christian, generally considered a Christian value. I know there are other cultures that also believe, and other religions that believe in this, but a strong family bond and everything like that. When you have, a family that is all together, you guys can help each other, you guys can lift each other up, and you can get more done together as a unit, as in compared to like an individual or one person. You know what I mean? Like, mm-hmm. If you want to improve your life. You know what I mean? This is probably something that Jordan Peterson would say, like put yourself together and get yourself a girlfriend, you know what I mean? And then that gives you responsibility. And then by getting that responsibility, you're able to do more and you'll be able to improve your life, by working together and getting further ahead. And,
I mean, that goes into something that I truly believe, and I've been thinking about for probably the last decade or two. and it does have to do with family, but it has to do with the, family and family size. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Think of my dad, right? He has, one of them did pass away, but what is it? 21 grandkids.
Yeah.
I think it was. And then he has some great grandkids along, as well. Right. Why am I bringing this up is he had 6 kids. Those kids had more kids, and so forth. And he might have, I don't know how he and grandma actually, how much stress they had having this amount of kids, and we were actually pretty close together in age. But right now he's in his 90s, and for the last, while, he's been absolutely like blessed. And he'll tell you basically he really likes the kids coming over to the house. He likes the grandkids coming over to the house. He likes interacting with these people. That's one thing. But also, to your point, when his health started failing, he could rely on family more than trying to grab people from the outside to help him do those things. And there's something to say about that is about family, and it's a blessing. What I would say to the audience out there, and this may sound absolutely crazy, is that if you're young, I would encourage you, if you're young and you want to get married, get married. I would encourage you to have more kids than less. I really would. Right now in society, I mean, it is, it's like I have to have only the amount of kids that don't hinder me from my, my career path. It's like, that has been kind of ingrained in us for, I don't know, 2, 3, maybe 4 decades, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I remember years ago where there were a couple people actually at my work. It was a retail operation. Actually, it was 4 years ago. For some reason, I remember it was somewhere. It was a long time ago. It was in the 80s. But I remember there were two manager ladies there that absolutely, they purposely pushed their kids off until they were in their 40s. Okay. Right, their first kids. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not having kids after I'm 30. You know what I mean? Like I'm thinking to myself, like, how in the world am I going to be a 60-year-old man and having a 20-year-old in my basement? You know what I mean? That would be, and them saying, "Hey, I need some chips and Coke," and I'm like, "Get it yourself." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but the point being is that if you're young, don't be afraid to. If you're young, married, don't be afraid to have kids, and more, the more the merrier, and don't allow the public and don't allow the common thought to enter in the fact that it is a bad thing to have a large family at all. It's not.
Well, I mean, if we want to get a little deeper into that, it's like, we know that several large companies are going to have population collapses in the future. Japan's one of them, right? Mm-hmm. And the same thing with the United States. There's too many boomers, and there's not enough of all the other generations to make up for the fact when the boomers die off.
It's funny that you say that, because that is so. We talk about we talk about kind of the mandate of God from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
It's to subdue the earth. It's to populate the earth, right? And I think implicit in that is to just, have kids and don't worry about how many you have. Like in the past, remember, it was a blessing to have kids. The more kids you had, the bigger blessing society thought that God had bestowed on you, right? Yeah. That was kind of the thought back then. Now we look at it and we go, wow, they have 6 kids. What in the what are they thinking? That's really horrible. They're going to, take up more space. We're going to have to, we don't have enough food to feed them here on the planet, and just some crazy thoughts happen as a result, and I forgot where I was going with this, but anyway, it's absolutely no. Well, actually, it goes to say that we, even the United States, is for years, because we had that thought, now it's a financial crisis that we could be facing because we don't have kids that are working for the people that are retiring. You know what I mean? Because we set the system up in that way.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm not saying have kids for this reason per se.
Yeah.
But you can go into many aspects of society and say, this is the reason people should have had families in the past.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the things, and I was actually talking to KT about this last night. Actually, we're talking about one of the things is the wealth right now is heavily skewed on the boomer side, right? So once the boomers start dying off, that wealth will start distributing down finally, you know what I mean? And so, you know, overall, I'm talking as a general thing. I'm not talking any specific examples here. No. Well, another thing though, as you were talking about that, I was thinking of the way that the society is set up and how it is set up not really to incentivize having a bunch of kids. You know what I mean? Things are so expensive right now. Just getting food is so expensive. Luckily, gas has gone down a lot, right? I don't know if you've seen gas right now. Gas is like super cheap out for us right now.
Right now, I think it's like right around 220, 225. We can actually find gas.
Yeah.
And it's about $1.50 more on the West Coast, I found out.
Yeah. Oh,
you know?
It's probably more than $1. God, it depends on where you're at, but it's got to be more than that. But anyways, the point is, the point is the society is completely different. And I was sitting there, I was wondering about this. It's like, because we had talked about in the last one that you and I did about that, like that bubble safety zone where you know that you're safe and everything like that. And then we were also talking about society being evil. You hear about these people, and it's basically like Amish people that decide to forego technology, forego like modern luxuries, so that way they stay out on their land, they raise their kids like in a farming like society. They take care of their own stuff, they grow their own crops, and since they do it all the time, they're a lot better at it than we are, because obviously we have a bunch of other stuff. But if you spent your entire time focusing on like how to farm, how to, you know, raise cattle or whatever and grow crops and everything like that, could you grow enough for just you and your family? And would you be separated from society then? And then technically, wouldn't you be inside that safe zone I was talking about? You know, spend your whole time worshiping your God, you know what I mean, away from everybody else, you know, and you know what's right, and you ain't got to worry about anything. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's people that have gone into Amish societies, and there's some, you know, I mean, in any society, like, because that is a society.
It's like a micro society.
Yeah, it's a micro society within the bigger society, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you think about it, and there have people that have actually went into Amish communities, you know, and found some pretty cool things they thought about, but there's been some pretty horrible things in those communities. Yeah. The reason I say that is because sometimes we think that we can just kind of, and I think every one of us at times, we want to just say, I just want to get away from everyone, right?
Yeah.
You know, and then
that might be kind of what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Yeah, and but you know, this is where I would, you know, where I think, man, this.
You used to have a saying, you know, that I haven't heard you say in a really long time, but you said this when I was like a teenager. You used to say, we need to contribute to society. You would tell, like, me specifically, me and my sisters, you would say, hey, you guys need to go get a job because you have to contribute to society.
Oh, wow, I said that?
Yeah.
Wow.
I used to say that a lot.
Well, you know, I do think, I mean, from a, you know, I'm not trying to be prideful here, but I do think that my kids have a really good work ethic. I do. You know what I mean? Some of them,
for what we can do.
Yeah, I mean, no, honestly, we have a pretty good work ethic where we do things and we figure things out. Now, so I think that's maybe a good thing. And But back to the society thing, because, you know, when you said that we need to contribute to society, and I used to actually say that, my point about the Amish, though, more than anything, is that I don't know if it's, well, I know it's not right that it feels right that we should get away from people at times because people are evil. Society is evil, you know what I mean? But then we're building our own society that actually has its own evil things as well because we're trying to get away from this society, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And some people do that too when it comes to, well, why did you leave that state and move here? Well, because it was getting horrible, you know, and I didn't want to raise my kids in that environment, right? I mean, think about it. That's common for people here. You know, you hear that here. I know you do. You know, they move from the coast and they say, I want to live here. Well, why did you move? Well, sometimes it could be a job, but other times it's because it's cheaper and I could afford things for my family, and I didn't want the influences that were happening in those societies. So now I moved to a different society, right?
Yeah.
You know, and so Amish people have their own society, and it's not really, it's not like, they're protected somewhat, I guess, but at the same time, there's evils within their communities at times that people have exposed. You know, and so abuses.
Well,
a lot of it has to do with abuses to the women. You know, that's a lot of things, like very bad abuses to the women. So, you know, so we can't just pull ourselves. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah. I mean, they're all good points. I guess more. I guess I brought up the Amish. You kind of focused a little bit on that. I mean, let's imagine though it's just you and your family. Like, it's not like also your cousins, also your brothers and sisters. What if it was like just you, your wife, and your kids, right? Mm-hmm. And you decide to get a farm. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? A big farm, and all you guys do is work on the farm, and you forgo. Yeah, things like cell phones, computers, you know, just like those modern luxuries, and all you do is, you know, concentrate on you know, working outdoors and that kind of stuff. You get what I'm saying? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything bad per se about that, right? But something that that I've been trying to process in, you know, for a while here. And it has to do with community and church and the gathering of the saints and the fact that the Bible tells us to do this, right? So there's necessary things like, so what happened in the book of Acts, they start like right away, they started coming together and having community and the breaking of the bread and then doing things that you can only do. Now, sometimes things in the Bible we know are written just as history, and it may be something we should do or not. This was obviously written, and basically it was something that we should kind of emulate, right? And then there's other places in there. Hebrews said, I think it's in Hebrews where it says, "Do not forsake the gathering of the saints."
Yeah, that's a popular saying of yours too.
So, well, but if you're talking about society and then trying to get out of society, I don't think it's a bad thing to say, "Hey, we are going to try to be self-sufficient out here." But I think that we cannot forget that there's other people in society, other people in our community, other people in our churches that that they either can help us or we can help them, or it's not an or, it's and. I mean, they're not mutually exclusive. And we come together at those times, you know, usually it's Sundays, but it could be other days too. You know, we come together to have a service together. And, you know, and take communion as a group where it tells us to, and then we can actually at those times, those are the only times it seems like when we get together is when we can actually, you know, when it talks about praying for others and laying on hands on others, that's a really good time to be doing stuff like that. You can't be doing that when you're away, right? And doing other things. Can you forego cell phones and all that other stuff in today's society? You may be able to, but you know, I'm not saying that you can't at all forego those things. It's not an evil in and of itself to have them or not to have them. I just think that we can't pretend that we can just absolutely disengaged from anyone else,
Yeah.
everyone else in society, except for the basic needs that I need. I need to go to the store for me and myself and my family, and forget about everyone else, or screw everyone else, because I'm just trying to have survive, make sure that me and my family survive.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to have I'm going to help my family out attitude, but it's not okay to just forego society, for that purpose. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Man. I don't know. 35 minutes, is that good?
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, there's all that. If you have anything more, I don't really have anything more. It was kind of a totally different discussion. Oh, here's one thing I want to say.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't mention it at the beginning, but I really like the talk that you and Mom had.
Yeah.
Now it's funny because she named names. You know what I mean? This person,
Yeah.
this person. It's like I try to be kind of vague when it comes
I try
to
to too. Yeah.
comes to names. So it was kind of humorous, I thought.
Yeah.
And she was in the shrinking chair. I got rid of that stupid
Yeah.
chair that you sit in and it goes down. But I thought it was an interesting conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Totally different. And I thought you were gonna. I don't know what path you were gonna head on, but I thought that you two were going to be talking more about a little bit more about theological things, I guess, from her perspective. But I think it was more life stuff.
Yeah.
About,
well, I mean, that's just how it evolved and everything.
Yeah.
And yeah. I'm not gonna lie. It wasn't an easy interview. Don't
You're
don't
wrong.
Don't get me wrong.
I
I really enjoy talking to Mom.
Yeah.
But we were talking about the memory of basically my first kiss.
Oh my gosh.
And her you have to understand, the memory is so ingrained into the core of who I am, because it's seriously one of my first memories.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm 99.9% sure I know what happened. And when Mom is saying that I don't,
that was it, from an outsider. It was humorous. From you, I could probably, she's saying no, this is how it happened. You're saying no, I know exactly how. Yeah, both of you are puffing your chest, right?
This is this is why I don't know why I think some of the ways I think.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was an interesting conversation. Yeah. I'm really glad you had her on. I'm glad you had KT on. I'm glad you had your girlfriend on. So and your friend. I mean, doggone it, you've invited a few different people to this thing, and it's really good to have different perspectives. Yeah. Just of life, right? Everyone's going to be bringing that. Hopefully, if you ask me a question about, well, what does the Bible say about this? I mean,
I might need to start giving you something I might need to come up with the topics a day or two before. That way you at least have some Bible verses or something that you can read, or that would help.
It's funny because when we started this, and everyone has been on the premise of we want to have this as a real conversation, the kind that we actually would have where we're not prepared for the normal conversation that we have. Yeah. When we're just out and about doing things, right? Like I talked about in the living room, in the kitchen, driving, to the store or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think we can do that possibly.
Yeah.
And still keep it real, right?
Just a little bit. And I did like it. I do like to, we got to be careful about arguing about the specific verses. Mm-hmm. I think that's where it gets kind of weird, because that's the part that I don't like. Mm-hmm. I don't like when because I'll read a King James version. We've already talked about this a million times, but anyways, I read a King James version, and I have a certain interpretation. You read an NIV, and then you have a certain interpretation of it, and then it's like. You know what I mean? Maybe you're focusing on a specific word and I'm focusing on focusing on another word. So I don't like it when the arguments get into that point, because then it's just we're just arguing about I don't know. It's not a broader idea. It's these pinpoints that if we see the broader idea might add more clarification to the pinpoints as opposed to just looking at the pin.
I kind of do. One thing I would encourage anyone to make sure that they understand their doctrine. I was thinking I've been thinking about a lot of things for the last decade or two, just in a little bit different way than I used to, right? But I think Mom was actually kind of asking this question about Callahan, like, why is it that why Callahan are you so concerned about this? And this I'm talking about are basically he tries to be very nuanced on purpose when it comes to doctrine between, different faiths, right?
Oh yeah, when I talk with him, he's very, very specific on certain things. Yeah.
And so now what I would say is there's one thing I would say it's extremely important, right? What he's doing, more so than what most people would think. Most people would just say, I know what Jesus did for me, and that's all I need to know. Well, wait a sec. There are people out there that need to, and it should be everyone, but really it's how do you protect the flock? Well, you protect the flock by really knowing those even the nuanced things that could creep into the church and into what people think about, things like, could be the book like the, oh my gosh, what's the name of it? I just saw it at the bookstore the other day. But anyway, there's thoughts out there and even books that are Christianese that are more mystical than Christianese,
Yeah.
But how do you discern that? You discern it by knowing what your doctrine is, and you understand when you start knowing your doctrine and you can start nailing that down and verbalizing it, right? Then you can start seeing the nuances of other doctrine and how they differ. And then you can start saying, hey, I don't believe in these things, but we can be brothers because of this, or these things are absolutely heretical because of X, Y, and Z, right? Yeah. So how do you got to know the nuances? It's real important for people, and Callahan would be a really good candidate to really understand the nuances of doctrine to be able to combat heresy, right? Combat things that maybe aren't heresy, or combat things that could be creeping into the church and are heretical,
Makes sense.
Jude explained that, and even in the churches, if you look at like in Revelation where it says, but in this church, it might have been latest, I can't remember, but you have allowed, but it's basically you have allowed this to happen, and it's within the congregation. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and so
I know what you mean.
There's stark rebukes. So
I would say there is also value, though. If, maybe this comes back down to like discernment, or you have to know yourself, or whether you're capable of doing this or not. But there is knowledge to be gathered from other sources that are not Christian, like other religions and stuff like that. I think I told you I have a lot of other religious like storybooks, you know what I'm saying? Like I've got Native American, Greek mythology, I've got Norse mythology, I've got Chinese mythology. I've got several books that are just, they're big old big. Yeah. And like some of them, and now we don't, once again, like we don't take them biblically or anything, but there are sometimes where you can read through them and you can ascertain some forms of wisdom, I guess, out of it.
And and I don't think there's anything wrong with that per se. It's definitely not mutually exclusive. Compared to the thing that I'm trying to kind of portray about, it's making sure doctrine is solid.
Yeah, just when you read the Norse mythology, just don't go worshiping Odin. You know what I mean? Instead, you know what I mean? Like realize Odin's not God. You know what I mean? It's like
anyway. I don't know what else to say. The reason I was saying this though just had to do with maybe what we're going to talk about in the future. What we started talking about, and maybe the first and second and third episode, I think we're kind of more into doctrinal stuff. Then we weed other things into it. Now we may start pulling that in, and we don't want to have a heated discussion on that, I guess. I think is what you're saying.
Sometimes they're fun. Yeah. Sometimes I don't mind having a heated discussion. I just don't want to have it all the time.
We'll try to be nice to each other, I think.
Anyways. All right, 45 minutes. Is that good?
Yeah, that's good. I got to run, so yeah.
Thanks, guys, very much for watching. Hope you guys if you guys are still here, like, follow, subscribe. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yeah, if you want to kind of give me some heads up, then yeah, it'll give me a little bit to think about, a little time to think about those subjects. So. Good stuff, man. Feed a little dog.